Can you criticize a government without hating its people? I honestly thought the answer was obvious. Of course you can. But the more I look at the way people argue online, the less obvious it seems. Because today, if you criticize a government, someone immediately says, so you hate the people. If you criticize the Israeli government, some people say you hate Jews. If you criticize Hamas, some people say you hate Palestinians. If you criticize the Russian government, some people say you hate Russians. If you criticize the Chinese government, some people say you hate Chinese people. If you criticize the American government, some people say you hate Americans. But is that true? Or is that one of the biggest traps in political debate? Because a government is not the same thing as a people. A government is an institution. It makes laws, it sends armies, it signs treaties, it controls borders, it collects taxes, it decides policies. But a people is millions of human beings. Children, workers, parents, students, old people, poor people, rich people, religious people, secular people, people who agree, people who disagree, people who are afraid to speak, people who never chose anything. So when we say the government did this, are we really talking about every person in that country? I don't think so. And this distinction matters, because if we lose it, criticism becomes hatred very quickly. You start by saying, this policy is wrong. Then you say, this government is criminal. Then suddenly someone says, those people are all like that. And that is the dangerous jump. That is the moment when political criticism turns into collective blame. And collective blame is one of the easiest ways to stop seeing people as individuals. Because yes, governments can do terrible things. They can lie, they can invade, they can occupy, they can bomb, they can repress, they can censor, they can discriminate, they can fail their own citizens and hurt people outside their borders. And when that happens, people should be allowed to say it. Actually, people need to say it. Because if criticizing a government becomes forbidden, then power becomes untouchable. But at the same time, criticism must have a line. Because saying this government's policy is wrong is not the same as saying these people are evil. Saying this army committed a crime is not the same as saying everyone from that country is guilty. Saying this leader is dangerous is not the same as saying that nationality is dangerous. One is criticism, the other is prejudice. And we pretend this distinction is complicated, but maybe it is not. Maybe the question is simple. Are you attacking an action or are you attacking an identity? Because if I say the French government made a bad decision, that does not mean I hate French people. If I say the American government has done terrible things, that does not mean I hate Americans. If I say the Russian invasion was wrong, that does not mean every Russian person is guilty. If I say the Chinese government censors speech, that does not mean Chinese people are the enemy. And if I say the Israeli government can be criticized, that does not mean Jewish people should be blamed. And if I say Hamas can be condemned, that does not mean Palestinian civilians should be punished. But the problem is emotional. People do not hear criticism neutrally. They hear it through fear. They hear it through history. They hear it through trauma. They hear it through propaganda. They hear it through identity. So sometimes even a fair criticism feels like an attack, and sometimes a real attack hides itself behind the word criticism. That is why this is difficult. Because some people use government criticism as a mask for hatred. They say, I'm only criticizing the government, but then every sentence becomes about the people, the religion, the ethnicity, the culture. And other people use accusations of hatred as a shield against criticism. They say, you hate us because they do not want to answer the actual argument. Both tricks exist, and both tricks poison the conversation. So maybe the honest position is this. Yes, you can criticize a government without hating its people, but you have to be precise. You have to say what you mean, which policy, which leader, which army, which law, which action, which decision. Because the less precise you are, the easier it becomes for criticism to turn into blame. And the easier it becomes for people to accuse you of hatred, even when that is not what you meant. And maybe that is what we are losing online. Precision. People do not want precision. They want teams. They want slogans. They want enemies. They want one sentence that explains everything. But real life does not work like that. A government can be wrong while its people are innocent. A people can suffer under a government and still be blamed for it by the world. A person can love their country and still be ashamed of what their leaders do. And sometimes the bravest critics of a government are the people from that country themselves. So I think the answer should be yes. You can criticize a government without hating its people. But honestly, I don't know where the line is always drawn. Because sometimes criticism is necessary. Sometimes criticism is unfair. Sometimes it is brave. Sometimes it is disguised hatred. Sometimes it protects victims. Sometimes it creates new victims. And that is why I'm asking you, can you criticize a government without hating its people? And how do we know when criticism has crossed the line? Don't just write a slogan, give me the reason. Because I honestly think this question is one of the reasons nobody can talk about politics calmly anymore.